Redditors that have worked in breastaurants, for example Hooters or TwinPeaks. How were the working conditions for you and did any customers overstep their boundaries? What happened? I worked at Hooters for around a year and was surprised by a few of the dynamics. The girls were a lot nicer to each other than I would have expected. Not nearly as much cattiness as you would expect on a staff of all women. Most of us were students, a few were moms, and we would sit out after work and talk about the good, the bad, and the jackasses. Regulars are huge there, at least at my location. A regular would have his favorite girl, come in at the start of your shift, and leave at the end, and they made up 70% of my tips probably. Lots of phone numbers and gifts, but honestly not a whole lot more than I received working at a neighborhood bar. I quit one day finally when a customer pretended to be blind, dark sunglasses, feeling the edge of the tables to get around, and asked me to sit beside him and read him a menu. Not that strange of a request, until he put $100 down my shirt and attempted to feel my boobs inside my shirt. Told a manager, who said it was my fault, transferred the table, and I quit at the end of my shift. Worked at Hooters about a decade ago. I don't actually have a lot going on up top, but I've got a pretty nice butt, so they hired me to round out the staff. Most customers were perfectly nice and polite. I was surprised at how many families came to eat there. We used to have themed nights, and one evening it was all bikers. I was a little intimidated going into it, but can truthfully say they were some of the friendliest and most respectful people I ever served, and they tipped well. I only ever had a bad time once, and it was on another theme night. This one was for Marines. What the frick? I was pinched, patted, manhandled, pulled onto laps, and called a tease or worse if I didn't go along with it. My opinion of the Corps changed a lot that night. I was surprised at how many families came to eat there. My single dad used to take me to Hooters all the time as a kid. I liked going for the clams and oysters, but looking back he totally used me as a prop to get to dates. I distinctly remember a waitress giving him a frisbee with her name and number written around the rim. I worked at a Tilted Kilt. Some patrons were a little creepy. Some were really cool regulars. Some were just awkward guys trying to learn how to talk to girls. We had families come in and were more sports oriented. We had one event where former Redskins player Chris Cooley came in to sign autographs. Who let me tell you that Chris Cooley fellow is a frickin' douche drip. Douche drip. Vocab +1. I didn't know what TwinPeaks was the first time I went. I was just looking to grab burger. I was sitting in a booth by myself. The waitress sits next to me, all in my personal space, pointing out things on the menu I might like. I give her a look like WTF are you doing? She is all smiles and suggests some special of the day. I am like yeah whatever and off she goes. It's at that moment I figure out what kind of restaurant this is. I had a few flashes of emotions. Embarrassment, anger, acceptance. I ate my burgers, left the standard 20% tip and left. Lols, you think that's bad? I was at a conference and took a female employee to one of these types of restaurants. We didn't get it till we sat down and the waitress came over. We were both surprised at how skimpy her outfit was. 10 seconds of looking around later we had a collective OMG moment. I apologized and she laughed it off. Haven't worked at one but have a bad experience taking my mother to one. I remember the first time I went to Tilted Kilt. Told by some friends to go for the good drinks and food. One day I stopped by to visit my mother. She was recently hospitalized for a stroke. I asked if she wanted to go grab dinner at a restaurant and she agreed. Kept asking her where she wanted to go or what she felt like eating, but she did the typical mom thing saying wherever I wanted to go. Tilted Kilt came to mind, so I went there. I had no idea what type of place it was. That is, until we walked in and were seated immediately. Not so busy on Tuesdays. And I looked around and realized the theme was an excuse for short kilts. Also, a requirement for employment in the waitress division were bras sizes C and above. My mother, being the hardcore Christian she was, also noticed. I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe we should go to Chili's. As I started to get up she looked me in the eye and said something along the lines like, no, we will stay. You desired to come to this place to eat, so let's eat. She had that disappointed, judging mother look on her face and a tone like she was going to hit me with a Bible. It was awkward and silent that whole dinner. Got worse when I made the mistake and ordered some alcoholic beverage with shaken in the title. The server would bring the ingredients to the table and put them in a mixing glass and shake it right in your face for obvious reasons. It was good, but I did not order another as I could feel my mother's eyes burning through me. Ride home I got a lecture about finding a nice Christian woman and the sin of premarital sex. Would not recommend. Food was good though. TLDR. Unknowingly took my hardcore Christian mother to dinner at the Tilted Kilt. I worked at a wing house, which is pretty much the same as Hooters except our shorts are a little bit shorter. Normally people are super respectful, but once an ex-firefighter pulled me towards him because I was really busy and wasn't giving him enough attention, I guess. He wouldn't let me go even after I tried to pull away, which was mildly traumatic. Should have kneed him in the hose. Speaking of breastaurants, I'm reminded of a story of my in-laws. They are not bright people. They were taking a road trip from Illinois to Arkansas to visit my then girlfriend at college and started to get a bit rumbly in the tummy. It was time for lunch. They stopped at what in their seemingly illiterate minds was a Shoney's, their emotional home. It was an unusual looking Shoney's as it had no windows, but they stepped inside and whoa, why is it empty? Where is the salad bar? It smells like smoke in here. When did they start installing floor to ceiling poles? And why are the waitresses dancing around them with their tops off? As they realized the gravity of their mistake, a manager greeted them with what I like to imagine was a cheerful welcome to Shoney's as they started to turn towards the door. The manager reassured them that Shoney's has a great lunch menu, so they stayed. They freaking stayed. An older, very conservative couple went out on the porch and ate chicken sandwiches. And that's the story of how my in-laws ate lunch at a titty bar. Welcome to Shoney's. If their mistake was because the building was a former Shoney's, a chain that did have a distinctive look to their buildings in the past, then that's an absolutely hilarious and business savvy name to pick. Some guy came in with his friend. The guy was trying to make it fun for his friend who obviously did not want to be there. It looked like they had just gotten off of work or something. Anyway, so one of the waitresses walks over to take their order, and the guy says, "I'll have the chicken breast, hold the chicken." Ugh. And they left the more superior friend behind. I've seen a lot of people answering with jokes, but not that many with actual answers. I worked at Hooters while on break from school for a year, and then while continuing in medical school for another year. Honestly, I loved it. I was always really nerdy growing up and it was really cool to be treated like I was pretty sexy hot. It helped my confidence a lot too. The customers were generally very nice. Before working at Hooters, my main work experience was working at free clinics as a medical volunteer, and I was sexually harassed way more at the free clinics, and I wasn't paid for it. There are always a few creeps, but I feel like that's going to be true no matter what restaurant you work at. The regulars there generally tried to watch out for us too, and kept people from getting too out of line. The worst part was probably the social stigma I got from people not in the Hooters line of work. My friends and family were pretty judgy and lots of random people felt it was appropriate to start telling me how stupid Hooters girls were, or how that was such a bad job. They would always clarify, "But I mean, you're different of course." Jerks. One of my friend's uncles got mad at me for having Hooters as my employment on Facebook and told me I should change it because people wouldn't know how smart I was and would think I was just a Hooters girl. Working conditions. The managers were all really nice. The girls could get a little sassy, but to be honest they were girls ages 19-21 who were competing for money on the basis of flirting and prettiness. It's pretty cutthroat. The kitchen guys were awesome, especially if you could speak Spanish. Lots of the girls are really good people. Most of my co-workers were either college students or moms of young kids, and I'm still closer friends with my former co-workers than I am with any of the people in my class. IDK, if anyone has any questions I can answer them, but I'm not sure what kind of other info anyone wants. My main work experience was working at free clinics as a medical volunteer, and I was sexually harassed way more at the free clinics, and I wasn't paid for it. Given the clients at health clinics, I want to know who the heck has the self-confidence to flirt when they are poor as crap and sick. Never worked at TwinPeaks. I'm a guy, but I remember when there was a TwinPeaks that had just opened across the street from where my dad worked, and he kept saying that he heard the food was good and wanted to go. We eventually ended up going. My entire family, including my young little brother and I, a prepubescent teen at the time, and we had already sat down by the time it was too late. The waitress came up and everyone at the table looked at how she was dressed and instantly knew what we had gotten into. The girl was practically almost topless, with a small shirt tied between her boobs covering up her nipples. She took our order and we all acknowledged where we were. My parents still didn't even know if I liked girls or not. I do. I just didn't really show it at the time. I would be lying if I said I didn't look at the cleavage of every waitress that walked by, and my brother was just underage for this kind of stuff. So we kind of just awkwardly sat there and ate our food, trying not to look at the waitresses for too long. Needless to say, we never went back. Not because of the waitresses though, my parents didn't give a crap about that. We never went back because the food was freaking garbage mayo. Biggest plot twist ever. I worked at Hooters for a couple of years. Was actually not that bad. You would get your creepers and some guys get a bit handsy when they are drunk, but you learn to ignore it pretty quickly. I always made a killing with tips. Being one of the bustier girls certainly helped with that. Would also get quite a few offers to buy my panties and bras. Worked at Hooters for about 3 years when I first moved to the city. I had no job when I moved there and walked in to apply and got hired on the spot. It actually wasn't catty at all. The girls were great. Most of the girls were either in college or trying to break into acting. The regulars we had were a blast. The managers were great and honestly the girls there were so much fun to hang out with. It was actually a great experience. We'd get a few creepy guys but the managers would kick them out if you complained. We had this regular that was an older man, like 70-80 that would come in with a younger attractive lady. I figured she was like a niece or granddaughter taking him out. Why I thought this? I don't know, I guess I'm super naive. They'd have a few drinks and tip well. Super polite and everyone liked to serve them. They'd come in every few months. They were in my section one day and my shift was ending so they paid up and asked me if I would join them for a drink. Sure, why not? We often did this with regulars. They started talking about their cottage and stuff and I was like, oh, they're a couple. I don't even know how they segued into but they started talking about how the old man liked to watch the lady make out with other women in their hot tub and would I like to join them at their cottage. Nope, the frick out of there real fast. Welcome to the world of sugar dating. I have a few friends who worked there. Apparently once you accept that you'll be objectified and borderline harassed, you'll make good money cause of tips. Well, that is kinda the point. I'm so glad I read this. We're getting a TwinPeaks in my town soon and I was probably going to want to try it at some point. I'm definitely not into breastaurants so I would have had a rude awakening. I was so confused by the scenic views in their slogan on the sign because I live in the suburbs of Detroit. Apparently we need to post a sign downriver. I didn't work at one but worked next door at a Brazilian radizio next door to a tilted kilt for a while. We closed at 10 and would often go and knock back a few drinks at the kilt after work. If you google the outfit those guys wear you'll note we kinda looked like gay pirates. But here's the deal. Those 10 inches razor sharp knives we used to cut the meat for customers? Yeah, those were owned by the gauchos. They were our knives. There's a lot of pride that goes into being a gaucho, especially where I worked. Your knife is your livelihood. As a result, many of us kept our knives on us to and from work, normally in a box in the glove box of our car. But on shift and walking to the car, it was in a leather thong strapped to our waist. I tell you this to have you keep in mind that there are 312 guys dressed like gay pirates with long daggers strapped to our waists while drinking at a bar. So most of the girls there seemed to like it. From what they've told me it was more of an Irish themed sports bar with girls half naked serving people. 90% of the clientele was great and often families would come in. The other 10%? Well, we were present for one situation. One guy's apparently thought that ordering cheap drinks gave him the right to a show and pulled a girl's top down. That didn't go over too well with management and they'd already called the police but the guy was getting belligerent and the place didn't have security presence to speak of. But they knew us. And they knew we were friends with the girls. Long story short, armed gay pirates are scary and the cops asked us to please leave the knives in the cars before going to the bar. We didn't pay for a drink the rest of them time I worked there. I tell you this to have you keep in mind that there are 312 guys dressed like gay pirates with long daggers strapped to our waists while drinking at a bar. Mental image achieved. Couldn't stop laughing for the rest of your post. Currently work at Hooters. I've been there for 5 years. I have a love-hate relationship with the job. I love the people I work with and a lot of the regulars. I make great money and it's a more laid-back environment than any other restaurant I have worked at. However, I cannot stand how corporate is running the business. We are no longer allowed to sit with our customers. I get why we are no longer allowed to, but as long as you're on top of your crap and are spending equal time with each customer, I don't see what the problem is. And they're basically turning us into robots with everything we need to mention to every table. We have to add literally everyone that orders alcohol. We have secret shops, and if we don't add in there a shop, we get fired. Imagine having to add a 95-year-old man. I've been accused of being an idiot because I'm not trying to get fired. As far as customers overstepping boundaries, I've never really had too much of an issue. I've seen it happen. A girl had her butt grabbed and he got kicked out. Another had someone grab her breasts. She threw a beer bottle at him and he got booted out as well. And then there's the 1 or 2 regulars that think they're able to make moves because they're regulars. Overall, management has our backs when it comes to customers overstepping boundaries or just causing issues regularly. The thing that irritates me, personally, the most is when people automatically assume that we're all a bunch of dumb girls that like to show our tea. I absolutely love when people ask if I'm in school and what I want to do, in a very condescending tone. And I get to throw back at them that I just graduated with a BS in chemistry and I'm currently taking time off before looking for a job. The look on their face is priceless. Suddenly they start talking to me like I'm a normal human being. Like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with my job. For all the crappy parts, the girls and a majority of the customers make up for it. It's just the few that I mentioned that make me hate my job at times. I'm a bartender and get the condescending tone all the time. I've had multiple people tell me they make more than myself and my husband combined. They would never work in that atmosphere or let their wives. Then I tell them my husband is the owner and I'm basically there to have pocket money and they shut up. I hadn't heard of TwinPeaks until I had a Vegas holiday a few years ago. I had heard of Hooters, so of course we went there and it was a sad little place. But TP was awesome. As female customers, the waitress still did the sit down at the table thing and it felt really welcoming. I loved the lumberjack theme and the rock climbing show. I still have my frozen beer stein. It's nice to hear that they acknowledge that the women eating there may enjoy the same treatment the men do. Oh god, you just reminded me of the worst 2 weeks of my life. Have you ever heard of Moxie's? I like to tell people to boycott it at all costs. Which is harsh, but let me explain. A Moxie's opened up in my town. I was 22. I needed fast cash. I heard you could make insane tips. And I'd been working as a server bartender with a background mostly in fine dining for the past 4 years, so I figured I'd apply. Even if the dress code was kinda weird. I went to the hiring fair. Was picked up for a bartending role immediately. This is Canada and I'm a tall multi-ethnic looking British redhead, so bar is basically my thing. We all went to training together. I guess there were about 50 of us in total. First thing I found weird was that I was required to wear at least 2-inch high shoes while working behind the bar. That's just a freaking death trap. Have you ever slipped on a lemon slice in stilettos? Because I have. It's terrifying. After that, I was openly told my shirt wasn't low cut enough and I should wear shorter skirts. I tried explaining that people would be able to see up my skirt when I change kegs or reach down to the fridge for drinks. I was told yes. We were told we would be doing fine dining service, but everything they told us was wrong. I'm fine dining. You do not flirt with male customers in front of their dinner dates. You do not touch your customer's arm and shoulders to make a connection. You do not sit at their table after your shift and drink with them. Jesus frick. The female managers were freaking awful. They were older women and seemed to hate us for it. The environment was unbearably catty. You could not ask these women for help at all. The male managers were worse though. In fact, the final straw for me was watching a middle-aged man put his hands on an 18-year-old's butt to help her walk better in heels. He seemed to think he could teach all of these 18-year-olds how to walk in stilettos. I actually offered to teach them instead, but he made up some reason about him being better at it. It was disgusting to watch this level of sexualization be normalized to these young girls. For some of them this was their first job. I didn't even make it through training. I slipped on a puddle by the bathroom carrying a load of bar glasses to the dish pit, fricked up my ankle, landed in a way that my head ricocheted off the polished concrete floor, and broke all of the glasses. I was helped up by a group of concerned servers, also in stilettos, and one of the female managers told me just leave, no concern, just resentment. So I did just leave. I called a cab and went to the ER to have my ankle x-rayed and see if I had a concussion. Ankle was fine but I did have a fairly bad concussion. I would never suggest anyone work at Moxie's. It's a cesspool of outdated values, populated by managers who seem to have Trump-like mentalities when it comes to respecting women. Good to know. I've only been there once a long while ago and remember the food being nothing special, but I'll actively avoid it from now on. I worked at a high-end lounge called the Redhead Piano Bar in Chicago, and even though it had a dress code and allowed cigar smoking, it was a classy breastaurant. My uniform was a red choker, before they made a recent comeback, a buster, fitted tux jacket, black stockings and heels, no pants. Of course these rich old men would have a few scotches and get a bit touchy, but it was dark and the piano was loud. But luckily we had our blink lights. Part of our uniform was a bright LED pen light, and when we needed to get a bouncer's attention we would repeatedly blink the light in their direction. If we blinked because of you, you were thrown out onto the street in a matter of seconds. I currently work at Hooters and I've been there for about 2 years. Management is very important, but I have honestly been treated better at Hooters than I have at any of my other jobs. The girls become your best friends. Everyone has this stigma that it's like a strip club, but it's like any other family restaurant. It's fun and we are treated in a respectable manner. I would say most customers are very respectful, but then there are the few that definitely cross the line. I once caught a guy taking pictures of me and the other girls, so I grabbed his phone and he was zooming in and had taken at least 50 pictures of our asses and boobs. I also remember a guy had come in and brought one of the girls a thong. But I mean, come on. I deal with crap like this at any other bartending job. Hooters is great. It wasn't too bad actually. I only had a few men and one woman. Whoever got too explicit probably had a phone number left every other shift, or sometimes 2 to 3 numbers a night, depending on what other girls were working. I made pretty good money. My last night, I made altogether $400. I had one table with 2 men leave me $160, but one of the men pretty much manhandled me before he left. It was a fun job all around though. If I wasn't married I would probably go back. I feel like all the people sharing their experiences about accidentally walking into one of these places with their families, not knowing what it was, answers the common question the waitresses posting here keep addressing. Why are there so many families that come in here? Mayo. The worst part about working at TwinPeaks was getting caught up in the Black Lodge. Freaking red curtains and zigzag flooring everywhere. This freaking midget dances up to me and says Gatsuwas Nika FHTD Suevadluas UOY. It was a freaking head trip. I do not recommend. He gave me a flyer. Ivan EHT Nyaj. Me and a bunch of friends were backpacking through Europe, and we went to a Hooters in Switzerland, just for kicks, and because we really wanted a burger and it seemed like the only place where we could do that. The vibes were not really intense, and around us, there were mostly families and other tourists. The awkward thing I remember was our server asking us tons of questions in a really flirty way. She seemed quite embarrassed and it definitely felt like their management required them to flirt with customers. I don't really know if that is a Hooters thing. I worked at Tilted Kilt for about a year during college and it was overall a much more pleasant experience than I had expected. I had worked in a restaurant prior but only had hostessing experience, but I lied on my resume and said I had served before. Figured they wouldn't look too much into it, so I got to start right away as a server, which was awesome. Serving itself was harder than I thought, but so much fun most days. Costumers were usually men on work trips and we definitely had quite a few regulars who were all a little off but very nice and would bring chocolate or coffee for everyone. I had one regular actually give me a 20 when I had told him another table left me nothing on a 100+ tab. One regular apparently paid for a girl's boob job and I'm a little sad I missed out on that opportunity, lol. Girls were shockingly nice and we all looked out for one another. Managers didn't put up with bulls from any costumers, and if we ever felt uncomfortable we were encouraged to let them know. We were also usually walked out to our cars by busser or barback most nights. My biggest complaints was honestly the uniforms due to the fact they were really uncomfortable. Also had to wear little high-heeled shoes that made me almost twist my ankles a few times running from table to table. Overall, I loved the experience and I got to meet some really cool people. 10/10 would recommend. Kinda related. In Perth, Western Australia back in the 90s, we actually had topless hardware stores for a short while. That was popular while it lasted, but the authorities soon closed the legal loophole that allowed it. Safety? If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.